Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. I'm here with Walter Clarke, and we're live. And I'm going to do something different this time. I want to say, hey, we're live right now. If you're out there, if you can give us a thumbs up, if you can give us an emoji, give us a hello, give us a comment, let us know you're there. And we can see your comments. We can see your likes. We can see who's out there. So can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. You can hear me. And I'm here with Walter Clarke. Walter, I'm so grateful to have you here. Walter, you're a good friend of mine. I met you when I first got sober, and you had already been sober for a couple decades by the time I got sober. And so it's been great to be friends with you, and just to we've done a lot together. We've done triathlons together. We ride together. We cycle together. We've done a lot together. And so let me read your bio real quick. I shortened your bio, but Walter spent 18 years as a financial educator, teaching at many prestigious universities, including UC Berkeley, UCLA, ASU, DePaul, TCU, UNLV, University of San Diego, UC Santa Cruz, UC Davis, and Tecnológico de Monterrey. In 2003, he started his own investment firm. In 2013, he paid a $10 million dumb tax and lost his firm. The consequence of reliance on others without a full understanding of the issues and risk associated with a transaction. He is committed to communicating and teaching the many lessons he and others have learned in the quest for happiness, keeping wealth without losing oneself or the people they care about. Walter's, you just celebrated 35 years, and you've got sex, money, and sobriety is something that I think we all have in common. So I think it's a great topic, and just really grateful to have you here, Walter. Welcome.
Well, thanks. It's great to be on your show, and it's even better to talk about these very important issues.
Amen. It is, and I've told many people about this topic, and lots of people are really interested and can't wait to hear what you have to say. So let's start by telling me a little bit about your story and kind of what happened, and how you. Yeah, just share with me whatever you feel like sharing. Sex, money, and sobriety. Where do you want to start? And let's just roll with it.
Well, when I got sober, I got sober young. I am 57. I'll turn 58 in January. I got sober when I was 22. So you're right. On August 5th, I celebrated 35 years. It hasn't been, it's been an up and down journey over the last 35 years. But what was interesting when I got sober, I was concerned about really two things. Well, three. I wanted to be sober. I mean, my life was being torn apart by alcohol. But when I got sober, I thought, would I be able to make money? Can you live a spiritual life and be successful? And then what was my dating life going to be like? So you bring in sort of the sex side. So I kind of wanted to make money, and I wanted to have, a pretty girlfriend, or I wanted to get married and all of that. And I just didn't know how that balanced or reconciled, with sobriety, because for a couple of reasons. One, I'm Catholic, and I remember vividly, I don't know where you get these phrases, but there's a biblical phrase that says it's easier to fit a camel through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the gates of heaven. And that's something I heard in Catholic school somewhere. And that to me meant that, you couldn't be spiritual and have money. And then also being Catholic, they kind of preach, no sex before marriage. So, I'm 22 years old and getting sober and thinking about a spiritual life, because everywhere you go when you get sober, they talk about this spiritual journey. And so I'm thinking, okay, if I really subscribe to this spiritual journey, what's going to happen in the two areas that I have some desires in, and that is in sex and money. And it just didn't seem like we were aligned. It just didn't seem like a spiritual life was aligned in those areas. And I couldn't have been more wrong in terms of kind of what they represent. And what I was doing is I was really, I confused what sobriety is really all about and what the true solution is. It's taken me a really, really long time to figure that out. And that is when alcohol, and I'm an advocate of this, and a lot of times it irritates people, but alcohol was never my problem. And there's lots of evidence that if alcohol is your problem, just stop drinking alcohol and your life is good. But that's not the case with the alcoholic. We stop drinking alcohol and our problems just begin. We use alcohol to medicate the pain and to offer a solution to whatever it is that we're dealing with. The consequences of that is alcohol just makes our problems worse. So it's like there's a fire, and our solution is let's just get some gasoline, and that's what the alcoholic does until such time that we realize that is not working, and we come into AA. Now, there's lots of other solutions. There's lots of other things that your mind will tell you that will make you feel better. Hence, money and getting a girlfriend, sex, or whatever, however you want to call it. So there is a bit of a slippery slope, because when people get sober, they focus on, well, I'm not drinking, I'm sober. I'm sober 90 days, I'm sober 120 days. That is not what's going to keep people sober. I've just seen it. What keeps people sober is they become a different individual. They change internally. They don't become the same person that they were when they were drinking. So what I did wrongly is I just switched. I put away alcohol, and then I substituted the pursuit of money and the pursuit of a relationship for my happiness. And anytime you pursue something on the outside, it never manufactures or produces the result that you want. Just never. You can't make enough money. You can't have a good enough relationship if internally you are empty. And that's what we are as alcoholics. We are internally, empty individuals that need a spiritual solution in order to, feel better. And so, but if people look at sobriety and they say, okay, all I need to do is not drink, right? That's the goal. Let me just get to 365 days and not drink. I find that those people relapse, and those people kill themselves. They kill other people. I mean, they're just, because what happens is internally, the pain of your life, the pain of whatever was causing you to drink in the way that you did doesn't go away. That actually continues to manifest itself in your life. And so for me, the reason I love the topic of money and sex, especially sex, because it's an area where a lot of people, one, don't talk about it, and two, money is masked with some level of something. Like if you got a big car and a big house, that means something, and it just doesn't.
Okay. And so then what? You said you started pursuing a relationship. So what did you start pursuing first? So you got sober at 22 and you're scratching your head and you're like, man, I want to make more money, and I also want to be in a relationship, and I also want to be sober, and it doesn't seem like those three things line up. So I guess what's the next thing that you do? Like, do you start pursuing money, or do you start pursuing the relationship?
They can actually line up, Tim. It's just how you do it. See, money itself is not the issue.
Right.
Relationships itself is not the issue. It's how you go about what it is that you covet. Money is a byproduct of service. I know that now. I didn't know that then.
Right.
I pursued money. So I looked at everything, and the way that I did things is like, okay, how much money can I make off of this? And then I looked at relationships, like I got to get a great relationship so I can look good, so I can have an attractive girlfriend. And so it was really all about fixing what was wrong with me on the inside. And so as you do that, and as you pursue anything on the outside, and there's lots of other fixes, people use food, they gamble, and you have to be really, really careful when you're trying to get sober, because you really got to clean up all aspects of your life, and you cannot fall back on the fact of, and I've heard this so many times, like, okay, I'm sober, I'm sober, but I'm screwing around. I'm doing inappropriate things. I'm looking at porn. I'm not ethical in my business, but yet I'm sober. That is not going to get people and individuals. One, they're not going to have any kind of a spiritual experience, because when you're driving towards something that you think you need, like the people that are listening to this podcast, if you're sitting there and you're saying, I need this in order to feel better, right? A better job, a better girlfriend, more money in the bank, a bigger house. You know what? I need a Ferrari. I need a Ferrari in order to make myself feel better. You're actually looking for something external to make you feel better, and that never works. You have to heal from the inside, and when you heal from the inside and you look to God first, you have a level of humility, because you don't know what's going to make you happy. Like, so when I'm out there pursuing money in a relationship, I don't need God, because I got two things that I need, and I'm going to do everything I can in order to get those items. So why would I need God? Why would I need to sit down and say, God, help me to do what? And so when you don't know what's going to make you happy, and you are humble enough to follow directions, like we do in the program with the sponsor, where you call your sponsor up and say, hey, what should I do today? One, not drink, and follow directions. Then you become more service minded. You're not pursuing anything. You're just trying to be a better human being. And you wake up every day and say, okay, how can I add value to my friend Tim? Okay, be on a podcast and talk about some thorny issues, money and sex. Sure, I'll do that. Or somebody needs me to move some furniture, or I got to go help a new guy. So your life is reoriented in a very, very different way when you become more service oriented versus, what is in it for me. And that's where I just completely, missed the boat in my pursuit. So, your question was what comes first. And so for me, I was doing it all. I was pursuing money. I was pursuing a relationship. Because the reason I was doing it all is because I didn't feel right. I was trying to be something in sobriety. You know what I'm saying? I'd go to meetings and I'd go to places that had the nice looking people and had energy and a buzz, and, because I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be known, which has very, very little to do with like a spiritual connection and being a service. But I just didn't know. I didn't know.
So you started. So how long did it take you before you figured out that, so the money and the sex can be the solution that can replace the drinking or the drugs, right?
Oh yeah.
And so you're medicating by drinking and drugs and eating candy and cake and pie and going on Facebook and they didn't have Facebook back then, but you're doing all these other things. How did you finally figure out that God is what you needed, that service work is what you needed? How did you figure that out?
So what happened in my sobriety is I was really aggressive in the beginning because I was so beaten down, and I got a sponsor, and I worked the steps, and I was super willing. And so one of the things that I'll never forget this, but one of the things that he asked me to do early in my sobriety is we got together and we'd work the steps. And he said, now it's about becoming the man that God wants you to be. And I go, what do you mean by that? And he looked at me and he said, and I'm all of, 3 years sober at the time, and I'm 25 years old and, single and trying to figure out, what I want to do for a career. And he says, I don't want you to I don't want you to date newcomers. I don't want you to date women in the program that have less than a year of sobriety. And I just thought, why would you ask me to do that? And not that I'd ever really, not that that was part of what I did, but he just kind of felt like he needed to tell me that. And so what happened was interesting. And I was single at the time, but right after that, I was involved. I went to a lot of dances. I was very social, inside AA. And a couple of weeks later, I was somewhere at some event, some AA event, and I met this gal, and she was amazing. I mean, she lit me up like I hadn't been lit up in a really long time. And I thought, oh my God. And in the back of my head, here's this voice like, you better ask her how long she's been sober. And sure enough, I did. And she's like, I've been sober 6 months. And I'm like, oh my God, I just agreed to do something that I think is the dumbest thing I've ever done. And so I went back to my sponsor and, really lobbied. You know how we do that when we lobby what we want? And it was pretty funny because I told him that she had phenomenal sobriety. So her 6 months was like 2 years for most people,
Yeah.
And I said, dude, there's people that got 2 years that don't have her sobriety. And he's like, what's your commitment? And I just said, I was pissed, and I'm like, you're married and you don't know what it's like to be single, and you've never met this girl. She's the one. And I realized what I needed to do. So I called her back and I said, hey, I made this dumbass commitment to my sponsor. I can't see you until you're sober a year. She said, okay. And then I continued to see her. And every time I saw her, I wanted to date her. And I'd call my sponsor back. I did that probably 4 or 5 times. And he kept asking me what my commitment was. But so here's what happened is I was giving up something that I thought I needed in a relationship. And that was early on in sobriety when I was really working hard at it and really trying to do the right thing and trying to follow directions. Because one of the key things in being sober is you got to stop listening to yourself, right? You got to really stop listening to you. You know what I'm saying? I can't go into the morning and say, hey, Walter, what should we do today? Oh, I think this is a good idea. I sponsor a bunch of guys and I just chuckle at the guys that call me. And I could put the phone down and come back 15 minutes later and they're still talking. A lot of times at the end, I'm like, why'd you call me? Seems like you got all the answers. And I just wait for them to kind of crash and burn in terms of their own internal guidance. So really, I was at a point in time in my sobriety. And, at the end of that year, when that gal turned a year sober, right before that, she got a boyfriend.
Of course.
Yeah. And I went back to my sponsor and I said, hey, see what happened? You just ruined my life. She's got a boyfriend now and that's it. I've lost out. And a couple of months later, she broke up with the boyfriend. We dated for a while and nothing is ever as good as you think it's going to be. Especially when somebody tells you you can't have something. I mean, that candy bar is the best candy bar in the whole world. If somebody tells you you can't have it. But the minute they give you that candy bar, you have a couple of bites and you're like, it's terrible. And so what happens in sobriety is when you're really aggressive about your program and sponsorship and doing all the right things, your life gets good and it gets really good. And it's really, really hard to maintain that level of discipline and commitment and humility to continue that. So for me, as I got sober and as the years clicked away, I gradually got away from that regiment. And then slowly the money and the lifestyle, and then I got a girlfriend, and then we got married and we had kids. And that all of a sudden took on a life of its own. And I desperately wanted to be successful. And I remember what was really fascinating is I said to myself when I was 22, back in 85, and so this was my benchmark. I said, you know what, if I ever made 6 figures, $100,000 a year, oh my God, that'd be everything. I mean, I wouldn't have a worry. You know what I'm saying? I would be absolutely happy. Well, I started business. I started making money. I started making more money. I started making a lot of money. And I say this not to be arrogant or alienate your audience, Tim, but it just serves as kind of what I know. But I thought 6 figures was the number, and I started making 7 figures. And what happens with money is you can buy a lot of stuff with the money that you make. And again, cars and houses and stuff will not fix what it is that is the spiritual hole that exists if you don't continue to work on it. So my deviation in my sobriety happened very, very, very slowly over time. And so then I'm making all this money. I'm married, I have kids. My marriage isn't going well. Why isn't my marriage going well? Because I'm not a good person. I'm not a good person to be around. Like, you know, those people that are in meetings and all they care about is the pursuit of something outside of them. You would never want what they had. And I was that guy. And so it was never my fault. It was, I got a bad wife, and that wasn't the truth. I was a bad husband. And so what do you do when you're in a difficult marriage and you're making a lot of money? You begin to have affairs. And so you think, well, that'll make me feel better. And then I felt well, I'm sober, right? I'm sober, making a lot of money. I can do this. So there's a lot of con jobs that we turn on ourselves under the guidelines that I am sober. And I just think it's a bunch of horseshit, because you will eventually get taken out either by a drink or something, or you'll go so crazy that eventually your self-centered habits and behaviors will catch up to you. And I literally was living a lie, going to meetings, collecting chips, talking about the page, 64 or 68 or whatever, the big book, because I'd gone to big book step studies and I knew the book inside and out. But what I was doing on the outside, once I'd leave the meeting, was completely different than what I said. And it has nothing to do with what you say. It has everything to do with what you do. And that's why some friends of mine inside AA sober have committed suicide, because they got sober. They had long-term sobriety. They forgot what got them to their spiritual connection, and they got uncomfortable. And so instead of going back to basics of what they did in the beginning of sobriety, they pursued other things: money, sex, gambling, food. You see a million addictions. You see some of the most unhealthy people in the rooms of AA under the guidelines that I'm sober. But they won't deal with their health. They won't deal with their weight. They won't deal with their obsession with food. My path was money and infidelity, and I have a lot of regrets about that. However, I also know that there is absolutely no grace in me staying quiet about that, because there's a lot of dudes out there that are suffering, that are doing shit they shouldn't be doing. They're on websites they shouldn't be on. They're in relationships they shouldn't be on, but I'm sober.
Right.
And they're literally missing out on the gold of what it is that's that this fellowship has to offer.
So clearly your sobriety has not been a straight line. And what I mean is you've had your little deviations, right? With money, sex, food, and whatever. And is it better for somebody to act out in other ways, but they're still sober from drugs and alcohol?
I mean, Tim, that's a hard question. I mean, I don't know. I do know that there's a lot of sickness inside the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that has nothing to do with alcohol. It has everything to do with alcoholism. And you're right. I mean, there were years and years and years and years where I suffered dramatically, because on the outside, I looked like the model citizen. huge house. You know, people talk about, you know, buying a house and white picket fence, and that's all I want a house. I mean, my thing was a compound. You know, my house was 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think I remember you told me your master bedroom was 2,500 square feet, and 2,000 square 2,000 square foot bedroom, and you never saw your kids.
Yeah, you know, and so here's the thing. I don't think there's any more or less spirituality in money. I don't think there's any more or less spirituality in poverty. Like people say, well, I just don't want anything. I want to be spiritual. I think that's bullshit. You know, money and is a byproduct of how much service. For me, I was self-centered. I was always looking at it from what's in it for me. You know, how much money I can make. And today I don't do that. Today I look at, okay, we wake up every day and say, okay, how do we become more valuable to the people that we serve? And money's not our focus. Money's a byproduct of what happens as a result of how we serve. And the other thing I look at with money today is I used to covet money. And it's funny because by coveting money, I never had any. I mean, you would think that when you're making $100,000 a month, that you would have some left over at the end of the month. And I was always like stressed about money because I spent every nickel I made. And so the reason I did that, because there was always something that I wanted. There's always something that was out there that I thought would make me feel better, whether it was house, private lessons, this massive vacation, all kinds of different things. And so the way I looked at it now, I look at money and savings. The money's really not mine. It's just I'm kind of a way station for where it is right now. And my goal is not financial. My goal is impact. Like, how do I create impact and how do I move the needle for other people? It's the reason that my business imploded was a direct result of my own internal self-centeredness. So
let's talk about that for a minute. What happened with your business?
So what happens is, you know, a business is made up of a whole bunch of people. And I was a dictator. And the people that worked for me just punched the clock. They weren't owners, and they weren't vested in the viability of the company. And so when you're a dictator, people just don't care. So we made a mistake in a transaction, and it should have been caught by myself and one of two other people who were in the financial business. And quite frankly, if you even go back before that, I sold part of my business because I needed the money. And how do you need money when you're making seven figures? It's stupid. I call it a dumb tax. I mean, it's just, there's a book, and I love Keith Cunningham. He writes a book called The Road Less Stupid. And he's the one that coined the dumb tax. And sure enough, I paid a $10 million dumb tax. I lost my firm. And I did it because I was a self-centered guy, and we made a mistake. And the people in my firm didn't catch it. And I sold part of my business, and we screwed it up. And I didn't need to sell my business if I wouldn't have been overspending. So I got exactly what I deserved. And it wasn't until, because there's universal laws. If you just continue to be self-centered and you continue only to think about you, you're going to get what that gives you. And that's emptiness. You're just going to crush everything that you're looking for, whether it's a relationship, or whether it's a company, or whether it's a boss, or whether it's an opportunity. You'll find a way to kill it. You just will. I mean, that's just the nature. You ever been around somebody that all they're in it for is themselves? You know, we've all seen those people. You know what I'm saying? They're like a parasite. And I hate to say that, but that was me to a certain extent. And so it's not that God said, I'm taking this money away from you. It's just a universal law that you'll kill whatever is valuable to you. What's awesome and what's really incredible at the fellowship is God is ready for you once you become honest and willing. And I love to tell this story every time I talk, because I know that there's going to be some people out there that are going to watch this. They're doing some shit they shouldn't be doing. And so Tim, what he'll do in this post is he'll give anybody that wants it my direct contact information. And I'm available to talk to anybody at any time about anything. Because if you're doing it, I guarantee I've done it 2-3 times. I guarantee it. Because that was kind of my journey. But until you get humble, until you become willing to do it different, and that's what happened when I lost my firm. You know, my firm was worth in excess of $10 million, and overnight it was worth zero. And so that's where that $10 million dump tax, it didn't need to happen, but my own arrogance, my own self-centeredness, my own righteousness, and the way that I treated people, my employees, led to the ultimate demise. And it wasn't until, you know, everything was gone. My wife was gone. You know, I lost my reputation, my relationship with my kids, just everything was gone. I'm like, man, you really screwed this up. But what's awesome is once you start talking about that and you can get real about it, God immediately sends in the cavalry at any time in your life, COVID, not COVID. And I know there's a lot of stressors out there in terms of where people are at financially in this pandemic, and oh my God. But the minute we reach out and we say, okay, God, maybe I don't know. You know what I'm saying, Tim? Because here I am. I got these great kids. I got this great wife. I'm making 7 figures. I've got this mansion. I mean, come on. I mean, anybody would look at that and go, that guy's got a great life, but I was miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I was miserable because I wasn't honest. You know, I was leading a double life. I was treating my employees like shit, treating my wife like crap, you know, wasn't a good father. And yet, let me go get my 15-year chip, or let me go get my 20-year chip, and then get all these accolades from the people in sobriety about how great I was. And oh, by the way, I memorized this passage on Envision for You. So I could always manufacture something very profound. And then I'd leave the meeting and go cheat on my wife. And that's the life I lived for years and years and years and years. And the reason I talk about that in the way that I do is because I know there's some of you out there that got shit like that going on, and you're afraid to be honest because you're sober and you have a lot of sobriety, and you're like, how can I get honest about what's going on? And what you'll find is that people will come out of the woodwork. God will bring people to you that will have walked that same path. And so no accident that you're listening to this podcast right now, and I'm that guy, you know, talking about, you know, all these various things that I had to go through and I had to learn, because there's a lot of people living in a living hell inside sobriety.
So you said earlier that you were a parasite. When did you realize you were a parasite? Because you were sober for a long time, and you had a lot, and you had this double life. And when did you finally come to that realization?
Well, I mean, Tim, you and I both know this. The parasite never knows he's a parasite.
I know. That's what I'm saying. When did you realize you were a parasite?
Parasite thinks he's the giver.
Right.
So you got to go back to step 2, you know, restore me to sanity. What are you restoring me to? The truth. And so that's the thing that's the challenge. But so the test is, are you happy? Are you content? Are you fulfilled? Do you have people around you that love you and that care about you? You know, what are your relationships like? You know, those are really, really good tests about who you are as a human being. Because it's very difficult when you're in the sickness, when you're in the middle of it, until you suffer consequences, to get honest. Like in the middle of that, I would say all the things that I was doing were very justified. I mean, I was making a lot of money, so I had this huge lifestyle. I had my kids in private schools, and to my view, I was a great father because of all the things that I was doing for them. And I was a good husband because of all the things that I gave, possessions,
right.
To my wife. And yeah, I was not faithful every now and then, but I surrounded myself with people in the program that did exactly what I did. So you'll find whatever playmates you want to find. You'll find the spiritual guys. You'll find the guys that are really doing the deal and are really aggressive and won't let you get away with your shit. Or you'll find the people in sobriety, they're cutting corners or on these. They didn't even exist. Thank God when I was in my heyday, these websites where you can make these arrangements with women and pay them, and it's not prostitution, but it's, I don't know, whatever it is, but there's all kinds of crap out there that exists that people are doing that so it's a really good question, Tim. The parasite doesn't know he's a parasite. You have to wait until you either your consequences catch up with you or you get in enough pain to where you're willing to change and see the truth. But you ever meet somebody and they're a mess and you're sitting down and you're talking to them and you're like, hey, what's going on? And they talk to you for like a really long period of time about what the problem is. And the problem is never them.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that guy out there. And you and I both had some experiences with some people,
mm-hmm.
In your homes where they'll call me up and go, you're fired.
Yeah.
You're not the right kind of sponsor for me.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, you're new and you're struggling and you're making that determination. And that's the person talking to the person about what they think they need.
I think one of my number one suggestions to a newcomer is to take suggestions. And it's so hard for people to understand that. I mean, not always, but that's most of the time. I mean, a lot of times people are like, no, I know what I need. And so how did you realize that you didn't know what you needed?
I got the shit kicked out of me. When you have a good wife and great kids and you're making a shit ton of money and it all disintegrates, there's only one common denominator in that equation. And I've been unhappy for a really long time. I had, living a double life and, being sober. I mean, it's really, really painful. I don't know what it is about me. I just have this massive tolerance for pain that I can exist in an environment. I mean, I just was living in a living hell. And so it just took what it took for me to then really realize that I need other people and I need to reach out and talk and continue to work the program and steps and sponsors and kind of be in the fellowship. The thing that with COVID's hard because COVID takes away fellowship and community. And so we really got to work hard at being online and doing the best we can with Zoom and connection and, reaching out more to our, fellow alcoholic. But, the key, that it distills for me, we live this self-centered life. And you can continue to live a self-centered life and be sober. You can. Mm-hmm. I've proven it. And you'll be miserable, but you can continue to do that. And you can rack shit up too. Because the thing about alcoholics is we're driven and we know how to do things. And so it's just that when you do it in a self-centered manner, it's never going to have the effect that you're looking for. And so the whole point of sobriety is to become other-centered, to make others more important than you are. And so, I mean, currently, I'm engaged. I have a fiance, and I constantly have to remind myself that it's more about her than it is about me. And so, and Tiffany's, she's amazing. She knew my history. She knew my background. And so we've worked on a lot of things together. And that's what I missed about a relationship. I thought a relationship was a possession, with somebody that looked good. And then, but relationships are things that you got to work on. You got to compromise. We work together. And that's been a journey. So she's really, really helped me, develop in an area that, quite frankly, I didn't have a whole lot of skills in. And so, most alcoholics don't, but we have to be open and willing to do the work. So I work really, really hard at what I do in business and what I do in relationships. I do outside programs. I mean, I just work hard at trying to figure out what is it about me that reacts in the way that I do. Like with money, my money motto, Tim, was always if I make $10, I'm going to spend 12. That was my money plan. That was my financial plan. So the only way you can survive that is you got to continually make more.
Isn't that most people's money plan?
Not necessarily.
In other words, they might not know it, but in other words, everybody at the end, most people at the end of the month, they got no money, and it doesn't matter how much money they make.
I mean, yes and no. It's hard to make a generalization out of it, but what I will say and what I've learned is a lot of people covet a house, a car. I can't tell you how many people post that they just bought a Tesla, or they did this, or they bought that, and it's just so, it's wealth is defined as free cash flow. It's how much do you have left over after you consume. Never knew that. Nobody ever taught me that. That's a measurement of how, financially solvent you are. And the reality and the difference for me is, I learned my lesson. So when I went through the downturn in 08 and 09, I got crushed because I had mountains and mountains of debt. I was making a lot of money, but I was just levered to the gills. And so when the downturn happened and my income went down, I was in trouble. This time, I don't have debt. Now, I don't have the big this and the big that, but financial stability is way more important to me, and it's measured by how much free cash flow I have and how much money I have in the bank. So I'm liquid enough to handle whatever storm, this COVID thing throws at me. So I found myself going through this downturn and this economic situation very, very differently. And it was because I didn't use money the same way that I did in the past to, buy a big car or a big house or, have a big lifestyle because, I needed to prove something. And so the things that I have now are proportional to where I'm at in terms of my business and my lifestyle and where I'm at with my fiance, Tiffany, and, what our goals are. And I also believe that, I need to give away a certain percentage of what I make. And I do that every month. I never did that before. Mm-hmm. It's an important part of the recirculation of money and how you look at it.
So I got a question here from Tanya Howell. What is the thing you are most grateful for today? Considering your losses, what are you most grateful for losing?
Tanya, it's a really good question. I'm really grateful for my path. I really am. I'm really grateful that I made it and I crashed and burned in the way that I did, because my business is completely restructured as a result of that. I've looked back and said, okay, how do I take this experience and really make impact? And so anytime I speak in an AA meeting or a speaker meeting, I have the necessary time to do. I talk about all my infidelities and my everything I was doing. And the other thing about it, this is how just insane my rationalization is I wasn't really cheating. because I was going to one of those illegitimate massage parlors. Okay, so that's a non-emotional situation, and that's technically not cheating. I mean, that's the kind of rolling around crap that was like happening in my head. And so you talk about, Tim, you know, how did you know when you were a parasite? We can talk ourselves into anything. Like, you get me in a closet with me, man, there's a whole bunch of bad ideas that are going to come out of that. So, you know, Tanya, to answer your question, I'm really grateful that I went on the journey that I did, because I wouldn't have had the realizations that I had. I wouldn't have, you know, met my fiance Tiffany and embarked on what I consider to be, you know, that relationship. I've amended, you know, my relationship with my kids and my ex, and, you know, called my ex and said, hey, this wasn't you, this was me. You ran into a train wreck of a guy. You were a great mom and a great wife. And so it's really just any situation that we encounter that's negative can be turned into a corresponding benefit on the other side. Matter of fact, the deeper the wound and the deeper the hole, the bigger the recovery. I mean, I firmly believe it. Now, it took me a long time, because I was righteous for a really, really long period of time. I did not want to see my part in what happened to me. And I'll never forget, I was in a meeting and I was bitching about getting taken out of my company and how the government regulators weren't fair and my whole story. And some guy said, I don't hear anything in there about where you were at fault. And the guy probably had 9 months of sobriety. And I don't know how many years I've been sober, 25 years, something like that. And he was right. You know, I had to start looking at where I was at fault. So, you know, my journey's been my journey, and I'm excited about, you know, what's in front of me in terms of where the opportunities are. Because one of the other things that I think about is I'm not interested in living a small life. And what I mean by that is I'm interested in taking on big challenges. You know, I wrote a movie script about money and the abuses of money, and I'm working on how to get that in the hands. I mean, I'm doing things where it's kind of God and I pray every morning, like, God, how do we create the greatest amount of impact? And when you do that, and when you take God with you and you're humble to say, show me the steps, he will absolutely put the people and places and the individuals that you need to talk to get to where you want to go. The only person that's going to stop you from living that dream life is you, because you're too afraid. And remember what it says in the back half of the 11th step, right? It says, and the power to carry it out. So the reason it says that, because if you take on something really big, a really big event, a really big project, something that scares the living shit out of you, you're going to need God to help you do that. And what that's going to do is you're going to go, God, without you, I'm going to fail. Show me how to do this. And all of a sudden, a guy will come knocking at your door. You'll meet somebody in the coffee shop, or something will just happen. And voila, they'll be the people that you needed to see that are going to help you do whatever it is that you need to do. Because as we become bigger and we expand our world, whether it's business, relationship, within the community, Tim, what you're doing in Camelback, we have incremental impact on everybody around us, and we become a testament to God's grace. So people that know where I've been and they Google, you know, Walter Clarke, SCC, you see all this stuff that comes in, and there's no way that you would ever do any kind of money business with me, right? Based on what's on the internet.
Right.
But the reality of it is God's way bigger than the internet. So what he's done is he said, dude, you got to write a book. So I wrote a book kind of outlining what happened. He said, you got to write a white paper. And a white paper is a research paper about what happened to you to share with your colleagues, so that they won't make the same freaking mistake you made. And I did that. And I got interviewed on the embarrassment around losing my firm. Did that. So God will ask you to do certain things, and you got to be ready to do it. You got to be ready to tell your story, good and bad. And so I wouldn't change anything. I regretted hurting my kids and my ex, but really that was that was my journey. And the conversations that I have with them today is how off the rails you can be when you pursue something that's outside of yourself.
I think that's a great question. It's like, what are you grateful for losing? And it's kind of like we have to be at a place. And I don't know if you may have told this to me. I'm sure you share the same sentiment. It's like I have to be grateful for everything that happens, and it's being a victim versus being responsible, right? It's like, what's my part? And being grateful so that I can move forward, because I can't move forward until I'm in gratitude.
And people they have to understand that when you try to do something big, you're going to step in a lot of potholes and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And so the stepping stones of mistakes, whether they're the kind of mistakes that I made or they're just mistakes in general that you make in sobriety, are really opportunities. And so I really look at my infidelity and my whole con around massage parlors, and I didn't have affairs. I just went to massage parlors. There's a shit ton of sober AA dudes going to massage parlors today inside the rooms of AA, and they think it's okay. So my mission, and hopefully this will get broadcast, and anybody that knows somebody that's doing that kind of shit, I hope that their friend, the guy that's watching this, says, hey, you need to watch this for the wake-up call, because they're suffering. They're suffering big time in that kind of behavior. So I really look at this, and when I was sober, I think 30 years or 31 years, I did this long post on Facebook about some of these behaviors. And I can't tell you how many calls I got from people that said, hey man, I'm hurting and I haven't had an ability to talk to somebody, and you were doing the stuff that I'm doing. We think we're so different. You know what I'm saying? I mean, do you think that you're the only dude that's sober 20 years that's doing stupid stuff? Lots of us. So I really look at that's my job. My job is to talk about, hey, if you want to go out and make 7 figures and think you'll be happy, I can tell you that's not going to work. It's just not going to happen.
Lots of different ways to go and seek fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing too, in order to stay on the beam, because one of the things that happens in sobriety is as you work the steps and you have a sponsor and you're going to me, there's a certain amount of repetition that happens. And so one of the things that I found that's very effective is I go to a lot of outside programs that complement what I do inside of AA, because they basically are saying the same thing. They're just framing it in a little different way. It could be a workshop. It could be a yoga retreat. I mean, you and I both have a good friend in Donnie Starks, which he's doing really just amazing things around, his messaging and kind of what he brings to the world. And so you may go to a retreat with Donnie, or you may go to a yoga retreat, but it's just another way to re-energize you to what it is that is your mission. And so what happened for me was, I just went to meetings and steps. And then I'm like, I got that. I've done that already. And so that began my erosion, my spiritual slide that happened, very slowly. So now we do a lot of things in the personal development world just to kind of really understand our blind spots and what it is that we need to work on today.
That's a really good point. And I agree with you. There are lots of other things besides just going to meetings and working the steps and sponsoring guys. And it's yoga. It's other things like Landmark, Psi seminars. There's lots of different things. Fitness, taking care of yourself, eating healthy, getting enough sleep. There's so many different things. Being sober is way more than just being sober. And I love all of the other different compliments that have helped me tremendously. So let's go back to the COVID-19 environment. What are you doing right now to take care of yourself in light of the of this COVID-19 environment?
Well, anytime there's uncertainty, I mean, you've got to sit, pause, meditate, say, God, where's the opportunity? You know, what is it that we need to be doing, and what do we need to do just to be smart so we can protect ourselves? And so that's really what we're doing. And so for me, the thing about meditation and the thing about any situation, there's an opportunity. There just is. And so I'm in the financial business, and I'm an educator as part of my business. And I've always wanted to put my content online. So when COVID happened, I saw this book publishing company, this guy, Tucker Max, who I have a lot of respect for. You know, he decided to put on a free event where he basically gave away everything that he knew about publishing a book in an online program. And I thought, my God, that's my hero. And so I've been teaching this class at UCLA and all these different universities for years, and I've always wanted to put it online virtually. And with COVID, I said, you know, let's do it. And I found a studio, and I was petrified, and I'm going to suck, and I'm not going to be able to do it, and nobody's going to sign up, and you know, all the negative things that happen when you have a big idea. If your idea is if you don't have doubt, right? You know, if you don't have doubt and you don't have a lot of fear, you're not thinking big enough. Because remember, you plugged into the greatest partner in the galaxy, and that's this higher power that we discover inside sobriety. So he's really not after you to play small, he's after you to play big. And so I decided to have a 7-week program, 3 hours. So if you think about what it would be like to film for 3 hours over 7 Tuesdays and to prepare. And Tim, you know what that's like because you're doing these podcasts, but think about, you know, 3 hours worth of educational content. We had over 30 speakers, and it just kind of all came together. And it was a direct result of just simplicity, prayer and meditation. God, show me what to do. Steve Lee's a good buddy of mine. It's like, God, show me what to do. Where's the opportunity? What do I not want to do right now? What am I afraid of? And so you have all the logistical things about masks and online meetings and, you know, just protecting yourselves, which we all need to do, minimize travel and doing all those things. But we can't stop living. We can't bury our head in a box and say, oh my God, this is horrible. I'm going to do it when things are back to normal. Bullshit. There's an opportunity right in front of you right now. Right now. And you're capable of so much more. And that's what God's trying to show you. I'll tell you what, after I did my first Tuesday night, Tim, I was so exhausted. I mean, it's 3 hours worth of filming. I got done. I'm like, there's no way I can do another 6 of these. There's just no way, because then the minute it stopped on Tuesday night, I had to prep from Wednesday until when I shot the very next Tuesday. So the Sustainable Family Wealth Summit is done. I did it. It wasn't easy. Made a lot of mistakes, but I did it. I got into action. And that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to get us into action. And he wants to do something that's way bigger than ourselves, because when we do that, we have to ask for help. So COVID is an opportunity. It's one of those things that we can't figure out. We can't figure out in our personal lives. We can't figure it out in our business. And so we got to say, okay, God, what should I do here? Where's the opportunity? And if we can do that, oh my God, there's freaking magic.
So, okay, I got one more question for you. Tell me about your morning routine.
It varies. I get up super early. It's generally just me, and you know, I sit down and read and meditate and really just kind of quiet my mind. The book that I'm reading right now is called Outwitting the Devil, and it's an incredible book written by Napoleon Hill. He actually wrote it in 1938, but he talks about all these emotions that, again, it's the book about he's having a conversation with the devil, and the devil's giving away all his secrets about how he deceives people. So I sit there and I meditate and reflect about, becoming really a free thinker and expanding my mind and asking God to help me think bigger. And I'm not saying bigger in a sense where I'm not happy with what I currently have, but what I know about life is we're either moving forwards or we're moving backwards. We never stay stagnant. And so in order to continue to grow, in order to continue to expand ourselves, we got to continue to challenge ourselves in doing things that we haven't done before, right? Like, so if you run a race and you finish it in an hour, next time you're like, well, I did it already, but now you want to try to see if you can do it in 55 minutes. It's the nature of progressing. And that's a fundamental law inside of life. And if we do that and we help somebody else run the race, then that compounds our effect. So now as I meditate, I'm like, okay, how do I create impact for myself and others? And how do I really move the needle in a way where I can change lives? And a lot of stuff he throws at me was like, this thing came into my mind about a movie script. I don't know nothing about writing a movie script. But then I said, okay, you got to steer me in the right direction. And all of a sudden I'm teaching a class at UCLA, and in walks a very famous writer, director, and movie actor into my class. And I said, how do I do this? And he showed me how. There is no coincidence. If you become willing, God will send the individuals that you need in order to get to where you want to go. But it all starts with that quiet time.
Mm-hmm. How important is your morning routine in getting your day started off on the right foot?
Oh, it's super important. Sometimes I reach for the phone and I'm off to the races, and my mind is a complete and utter rat wheel.
Right.
And, it affects, how I operate. But, meditation is, oh my God, it's not anything that has to be for a huge amount of time, but, I go both ways, where I start and I'm off to the races and I don't give myself some time, but I feel the effect of that. But again, remember what the first word of the 10th step is, that's continue. And so I'm listening to an audiobook by Keith Cunningham because I love his book, and I read it and reread it and read it. And he said, ordinary action taken consistently produces extraordinary results. So ordinary action consistently applied produces extraordinary results. And he said that today while I was out riding my bike, and I'm like, oh my God, we think we got to do these amazing things. So if you sit down and carve out 5 minutes or so and meditate consistently, it really moves the needle.
Yeah. That's kind of like Bo Eason. Bo Eason talks about how, he ended up being in the NFL, and he won a Super Bowl ring, and he grew up in a place called Blythe, and there were like 27 people at his high school, or 27 people on his football team, and 5 of those people made it to the NFL, and a couple of them got Super Bowl rings. And people, he tells a story how people would say, you're just gifted. And he's like, that's bullshit. It's not that I'm gifted. It's that I'm dedicated, I'm motivated, I'm hardworking, I make sacrifices, and I just consistently worked at it. And that's kind of the same thing. It's putting that time and putting that effort into it, whatever it is, if you want to move the needle. And you surround yourself.
Tim, how many people do you know? And, for the people that look at this or listen to this, somebody that wants something, lose weight, make more money. I can't tell you how many people, because I'm a creator. So people come to me and say, hey, can you help me with this or help me with that? And I'm shocked at how many are willing to take action.
Yeah, they're not willing.
Very few.
Right.
Very few.
Right. It's because they have to change their behavior patterns.
Yep.
So we've been at it for a little over an hour. So I think we're ready to wrap up. Walter, thank you so much. Really just grateful to have you here. We got lots of comments, so many great things. Charlie Forker, Tanya Howell, and several other people. Walter, how can people reach you, or anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, Tim, you can give them my contact info and my email, my phone number. You know, the thing about it is there's a certain amount of arrogance in recovering or being humble from sharing something that you've done that's really stupid, and grab somebody and say, I gotta get this off my chest. I gotta get honest about what I've been doing. And the minute you do that, that's the block. Because when you hang on to it and you don't share it, you have this force field around you. God can't help you. He just can't help you because you're trying to manage it yourself. But the minute you share it and you become willing, he'll send people like me, he'll send people like others to you that will help you no matter what it is. Whether it's an issue we're having right now with COVID or whatever, God sends the cavalry. He's got all these like little angels everywhere that will help you get to where you want to go. I'm constantly surprised at the minute I ask for something. So my book that I talk, this is another example. So I'm really struggling with publishing this book. It's done. It's absolutely done. And we got to find a publisher. And so as part of my summit, I had Sharon Lechter on. And if you don't know who Sharon Lechter is, she's the counterpart of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She sold over 30 million books. And so she was on my summit. And then I met with her. I told her about my book. She goes, oh, I'll help you with the publishing. What else do you need? Right? I mean, she goes, I've sold 30 million books. I'll tell you exactly what you got to do and where you need to go and what publisher you need to use. And I'm just blown away. Like, just get out of the way and be honest about what's going on in your life and where your demons are and what you're struggling with, whether it's, who knows? I can only imagine because I've done a little of everything.
Walter, thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Tim, thanks for taking on a tough topic. I mean, this is one that people look at and go, oh, what are they going to talk about? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sex, money, and sobriety. Sex, money, and sobriety. That's something all of us have in common.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay,
Thanks
brother.
so much, Walter. All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.